Welcome everybody. This is How to Be Your Own Therapy, our therapist with Miffi Maxmillion. I want to thank Miffi for spending time with us today. And just if you have any questions, unmute and ask because she has the answers.
Well, I'll give it my best shot, and I've got to say this is my favorite class of all time. I really love seeing all of you here on Zoom, and it's a nice compact 1 hour, and so just right, not too long, not too short. So what we normally do is just a short breathing meditation together and set our motivation, and then we'll open it up for seeing how you've been going this week, what kind of themes have been eventuating in your life, what Dharma issues have been kind of percolating around in the background that you'd like to bring up and share, and then we can cast our Dharma vision onto it, have a look at it through Dharma eyes, because in our day-to-day life we've got, you know, if we're lucky, we're surrounded by people that care about us and want to help us and empathize with us, but they can only go so far. It's mostly we just feel incapable of being able to help each other. There's the sentiment, the wish, but what can we actually do? We kind of find ourselves all at sea. So that's what this class is for, to actually get some really deep inner help, how to deal with the issues that are coming up in our life. And also recognizing that whatever issues are happening point to a deeper truth, and they can help us get to that deeper truth. So we don't have to fight against them. If we can relax and create some inner space and give ourselves some resources, inner resources, then we can use whatever experience comes our way. We don't have to fight against it. We can really just take the good oil and leave the rest. So let's start with the breathing meditation. I'm going to get my little screen share up for you. Quite like this picture that I put together, Buddha on the couch being our own therapist. Because, of course, according to Buddhism, we have this innate potential to become a Buddha. The Buddha's mind and our mind, no difference in nature. The only difference is that the Buddha already put in all the work, and we're still flailing around trying to figure out what's going on. And so this wonderful, inviting, soft velvet couch is our starting point. So let's do the breathing meditation, the 9-round breathing. Firstly, settling your posture so that you're comfortable, but your back is straight. It's really short and sweet meditation. You can do it, when you're waiting in the queue at the supermarket or at the lights, in the ads during the TV show. So straightening your spine, and once your back is straight, then relaxing your shoulders. Because your spine is strong, stable, then the rest of your body can relax. And if you're having difficulty relaxing your body, bring your shoulders up to the tips of your earlobes. Try and touch your earlobes with your shoulders tight, and then let them drop. And just do that a couple of times, tight, and then let them drop. Take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and let your breathing just naturally become slower and deeper. Just let the natural rhythm of your breathing be. And as you bring your focus inwards, to do the 9-round breathing, to settle our body and our mind. First, imagine that you're breathing out just through the right nostril. And as you breathe out all of the unhappiness and the fear and worry in the form of black smoke. So it might be really quite thick black smoke, and feel how good it is to breathe it out and release it. And then as you breathe in through your right nostril, feel that your whole system is flooded with golden light. The essence of this light are all the enlightening qualities, and they absorb into you. So 3 long, leisurely breaths, and then just relax, breathe normally and naturally. And then gently shift your focus over, swapping the nostrils over. So this time, breathing out through the right nostril, the black smoke, all of the confusions, doubts, and worries, all those habitual anxieties, all of that, release it in the form of black smoke. And then into that vacuum, breathe in the blissful golden light. It flows through you and absorbs into you. And as it does, you absorb all of the qualities of wisdom, memory, understanding, infinite tolerance, patience, kindness. Your whole body begins to glow and radiate. So with the nostrils swapped over 3 times. And then for the final 3 breaths, breathing out through both nostrils, even the very tricky, subtle or sticky negativities, the things that really cling on that you just wish you could get rid of. So breathe those out. Even the smoke might be a bit sticky, but better out than in. And then as you breathe in, really feel how every atom of your body becomes clear and radiant. So 3 times long, leisurely breaths through both nostrils. And then sitting with that radiance, feeling your body energized, clear, your mind infinitely spacious, alert, happy. Just breathing in and out, radiant light. And from this sense of calm and spaciousness, and we can recite the 4 boundless thoughts, these immeasurable attitudes is an incredible way to set our motivation. It's all encompassing. It's the very best motivation we could possibly have. And by reciting it, it helps us become familiar. It helps bring it into our psychic DNA. So let's set our motivation this way. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And let these 4 boundless thoughts become part of your mind, part of your psychic DNA, the background to everything that you do in your life, but also that can inform everything that we talk about in the class today. So we've set it up nicely. Now let's dive into the nitty-gritty. I'm just going to put you all onto gallery so I can see you. And how's everyone going? What's been going on? What's life like over where you are? And has anything come to mind that you'd like to delve into? Who has something for me? Or are these things secret? I mean, you're all here, right? So there must be something going on. We have a Deb arrived as well. Go for it.
I think for myself, there was a fabulous book that I read from Langri Tangpa Centre around Be Your Own Therapist about a year ago. And yeah, I thought there were some great messages in there. And and I have the day off, and I thought it'd be great to refresh and hear more about some of those messages. But yeah, but I'm going.
Yeah, that's that book. It's Lama Zopa, that one. I think, the Be Your Own Therapist, the little skinny book, isn't it? So what was it that jumped out at you in that book that kind of stayed with you?
Yeah, it was quite a lot. I think it was messages around you have the ability, well, when we're in the conditions, I guess, are right, and we can help create those, we have the ability to almost mold our own mind in a way and shape our thoughts. I thought that was probably like the core thing that kind of stood to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes so much sense when Lama Zopa says it, that then we're just like, how did I not know that? But I think when we get so overwhelmed by whatever's going on, we're so overwhelmed by the situation that we forget we've got huge amounts of resources already. We kind of become disconnected from them. I remember Lama Zopa saying, if you embark on a Dharma path, a Dharma journey, you have to be really strong. And I think it's strong, not necessarily like being, tough and hard and everything, but strong in that when we get overwhelmed, we have the presence of mind to remember, I have these resources. The nature of my mind isn't negative. It's naturally clear and alert and blissful. It's that kind of strength to have that presence of mind in amongst all of the swirling suffering and situations. But I've also found that's what's so good about a group like this is we just need to be reminded, isn't it? Yeah. So are there situations, Tom, where it does come to mind, Lama Zopa's words come to mind, like the little life raft that they are?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do. Particularly, I think maybe in the last week or so, maybe because I've kind of surprised myself in a way, in that how I haven't been overly impacted by some challenges that other family members are having at the moment. It's required additional support from myself and others to help get them through. And I think for myself, maybe historically, it might have been, it had quite a drain on myself, or a perceived drain, and then it would impact other components of life. But yeah, it's been quite surprising that it's helped to be almost a little bit more of a balanced and stable and a considered approach to how I respond to things after they've occurred.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been fascinating to observe, I guess.
I mean, that is really that's really wonderful. That's Dharma in action, because actually, you know, we are the ones within our family group. We're the ones that have a chance to be really useful, while everyone else falls apart. Even though, yeah, there's things that trigger us, and we've got our own stuff. Out of everybody, we've got the most resources. We have the the good oil of the Dharma, this incredible wealth of wisdom to draw on, and all of these skills that we can develop in meditation and everything to give us that kind of strength. And out of the rest of our family, who else can do that? Who else has the courage? It's really it's kind of funny, isn't it? Because on one hand, we feel so unprepared and like we're beginners, and on the other hand, we're it for our family. We're the one. Whatever happens, all the things that happen in life, all the disasters, all the sickness, when death time comes, dealing with children, with old people, with parents, with pets, all of the things, with jobs. We're the one, aren't we?
Yeah, so yeah, it's been kind of a wonderful gift for myself, as well as for, in this case, it's my mother. It's been, yeah, it kind of, what I can see is that across time, I might be able to be more of that familial support, rather than maybe just kind of coming in at key moments when I feel like I have the capacity. I feel like there's a higher likelihood that there's going to be a longer time frame that I can provide that for, and hopefully it is supportive and it works. It's been.
Yeah, so there's something that you've got to be quite mindful of there, that once we kind of delve into helping in a situation, it's very easy to get right into the contents of the situation and lose our perspective in there. You know, I mean, it happens to all of us, doesn't it? So there's this incredibly useful way of calibrating this from a Buddhist point of view, which is we separate out, we have our intention, and then we have what we can actually do. And so the intention to help, we always keep it. And then sometimes we'll have more capacity to be able to help, and other times we will be so overwhelmed and triggered that we just can't even talk to them. But normally what happens in ordinary life is that when we get to that stage where we're overwhelmed, we go, I just can't do this anymore. I can't handle it. And so we shut down. To remove ourselves from the situation, we shut down emotionally. And that's like a real disaster. So there is a nuance here where if we keep our intention foremost in our mind, our intention to help, our intention to repay the kindness, and therefore our intention to study and learn and develop all of our, inner qualities, patience and resilience and kindness and all of those things, keep developing those inner strengths. If that's foremost in our mind, then when we go out into the world and speak to our close relatives, sometimes it'll be more, sometimes it'll be less, but we don't lose the intention. I mean, this thing that happens many times, like when people talk about generosity. And so generosity, it's not the giving. That's not what generosity is. Generosity is the intention to give. This, like, it gets me every time, because I think, oh, well, you know, I'm poor, I don't have anything to give, so I'm not going to do it. So that's getting mixed up, the contents, the action of it, and the intention. So we can always have the intention to give and the intention to help. Always, always, always. Never give that up. But what we can actually do, that really changes day to day. And especially with family situations like that, always have the intention, you know, to help your mother, to repay the kindness, to become a mother to your mother. And some days you'll be able to do it, and other days you won't, and that'll be okay.
That's a really fantastic way of framing and thinking, because it seems if the intention to assist or provide generosity is maintained, I think how I could see it playing out is that there are more options, it seems like, and you could be potentially more creative in how that generosity is expressed, because it's not really defined in a certain way, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't just mean sitting and talking. It can mean all sorts of things. It can mean you can write a letter or a card or a poem, you know, or draw a picture or send a food package. You know, there's heaps of things according to your capacity that you can do to indicate. And even if you can't get out of bed and communicate in any way whatsoever, still means what you can do is send good vibes. Or in Australia, as they say, it's the vibe from the castle. I don't know if you, that this very hapless lawyer, totally unprepared, was trying to convince the judge about something, and he said it's the I don't know what it was, but it's the vibe. I think that's the wonderfully hapless way that as an Aussie you can still be a good Dharma practitioner. Why, if you're completely overwhelmed and have no resources left whatsoever, you still don't have to give up your intention. You can just lie in bed and think, may they be happy, may they have everything they need, and I'll always wish that. And then have a snooze.
Beautiful.
If I can also add, one thing that I've found is that adding that wisdom component, you know, how it's, I don't remember what class it's in, but, you know, it's how the right hand is compassion, the left hand is wisdom, and together, yeah, you can't have one without the other. You can't have, if you have wisdom without compassion, you become miserly. If you have compassion without wisdom, you'll be taken advantage of. And so for me, remembering that wisdom component, that, you know what, I can't give my last dollar. I need to remember that I need to eat. I can't I can't burn the candle at both ends. But yes, I can put somebody on a prayer list, or I can just say a few nice words. For me, remembering the wisdom is been very, very helpful for me this last 6 months, because I was doing too much.
So Shayla, how do you remember the wisdom though? Like in the heat of the moment, how do you actually remember that and bring it to mind?
I've been listening to my body, and when a situation just feels exhausting to me, I know that it's time for me to back away. That's what I don't know any other way. I've just been listening to my body.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one. Because this has like been a perennial problem for me. Like I've been pondering over this one for years, because it's so easy to get it wrong. And so really similar to what what you said, Shayla. I've been going to a counsellor as well, just because crisis counselling, Western counselling is really good for the crisis, and then once you get a little bit of strength up, then you can delve in deeper with Buddhist psychology. And I find you really need to have both. So in my crisis counselling, her words of wisdom were, you can gauge how much you can do. It changes, and the way that you gauge is by looking at the impact it has. So some days you can give, and the impact, it's okay. You've got enough. And other days you try and do exactly the same thing, and the impact on you is complete exhaustion. And so then we've got to be able to recognize that, and but how we look at it's really different. And so Lama Yeshe, the thing that really stood out to me with the difficulties, what Lama Yeshe said was, you always keep people close in your heart, but when they're difficult, you keep them physically apart, physically distant, close in your heart. And that's the formula. So Shayla, you listen to your body. When you're exhausted, then you have to rest, but they're still close in your heart. Physically distant, close in your heart.
I love that. That's
it is the algorithm, isn't it? And then I look at how I would normally do things, and it's usually the other way around. It's usually I can't get away from the situation. I keep on pushing through and getting more exhausted, and then you start burning out. You start getting cynical, impatient, uh, intolerant of other people's suffering, all of those things. That comes from getting it back to front.
and I don't like
I
that
see,
person.
Mom, what do you reckon about that?
Oh, I
yeah.
don't like it when they get to that point. I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go. Oh, you go, mate. Oh, you go. Oh, no, I was just all good. No, I was just reflecting a little bit on in terms of I mean, my world view at the moment is that there's a lot of pain and suffering. Like, it's just incredible. And then what to do. That sometimes it feels, well, kind of need to work to get money to pay for food and housing and sheltering. Then you can be doing a whole bunch of other things that might help people who don't have a home, but don't have food, etc., even locally here. And then I guess that's where that wisdom piece comes in, and you're saying that looking after self is good. Otherwise, you could just. I mean, some people
It
do
is good, but why is it good, Tom? Why is looking after yourself good?
Yeah, you have the capacity then to do what you can to help
Yeah,
relieve
because
suffering.
just looking after yourself, just going to work and paying the bills and looking after your family, actually, what is the point? I mean, that's a good question. And then because we're in a leisured society, or relatively so, then we go, oh well, no, you got to look after yourself and get your priorities and don't burn out and all of that. But the real fundamental question is why? And like what is the point? And it's really the difference between an ordinary life or understanding the meaning of our life. Because honestly, an ordinary life, that's why thankfully we have midlife crisis, because an ordinary life cannot be sustained. It's just not enough. There's no reason for it. And so then we have a midlife crisis, or we have the menopausal dreads that come, the waking up every morning filled with dread. menopause women have a totally different midlife crisis. Like the guys get to go out and get their second go at a new, younger version of a wife and a car and la la la, and have the last hurrah. And women just wake up with dread for about 4 years in a row. Bang. But either one, it's like how we've been going in an ordinary way cannot be sustained. We've got to find what is the meaning of it. So if you're saying, yeah, you've got to look after yourself and not burn out, you've got to find why. Because otherwise it's just not enough. And then when the suffering comes, when things go wrong, when people get sick or they die and the suffering comes, then we don't know how to use the suffering either. We just don't want it. And a lot of times the suffering is inescapable. And so it's a terrible irony. Then you have all this inescapable suffering, and fighting against it makes it worse. And we miss the trick, which is what it's showing us is what is the point? What is, how do we take the meaning of this life? So I suppose actually when the problems come along, we're thrown into that question. It's probably the one good thing about the problem is that we're thrown into the question of, well, what is the point? What is the meaning of this life? Have we understood the meaning of this life? And that's going to be a different answer for people. And we may fall to the words of whatever religion or philosophy that we're in. But actually, we've got to discover it ourselves experientially. Have I understood the meaning of my life? And it's great to get some poetry or some Buddhist wisdom to help us. But really, the only time I find that I look at that question is when things have gone wrong, is in the suffering.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, and it's probably good when at the moment, maybe, and I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, when things have got to a challenge point, then that question does arise more, and then it's harder to, I find, potentially to really get or make my way progress towards a potential resolution. I think the resolution always changes. But
it does, and I think most ordinary life, most ordinary people have very little to draw on to deal with that question. So when suffering happens, it's just like, don't give up, fight against it, or just focus on the good things. That just doesn't give you enough nourishment or nutrients to get going with that. It's really hard work. So, just recently I've been faced with this situation where one of my close relatives has just been diagnosed with cancer and having really intense chemotherapy. And I realized that it's only my close relatives that are in everybody that I talk with. It's only the close relatives that are not Buddhist, that have probably not really any religion, and they have nothing. They have nothing to draw on. And I'm really stumped because mostly everybody I talk to is in classes like this where we've got some kind of common language or an interest in the internal life. But then my close relatives, they're faced with this enormous suffering, and they have nothing to cope with it. And so I'm here. I'm probably the one that's the most courageous one to talk about the taboo things without getting upset, without being triggered. But there's so little that I can share if there's no common language, is it? So it's just those really basic things of this commonality of suffering, and we all feel it so intensely, and we just don't like it. I mean, it's horrible. But even though we feel it individually and no one can take it, off us, at least what we can do is kind of expand our awareness to just become aware that there are other people also by themselves experiencing the same suffering. So you're not alone in your suffering. Mostly, because we do experience suffering entirely alone, we forget that we're not alone. And so instead of kind of just making that even worse, like, oh my God, so now there's like millions of people in the same horrible position, instead of making it worse, feel it as support that everybody else is experiencing this. And so there's a world of support there where you share in it, where there are people that understand exactly what you're going through. And so I was thinking it's like this wavelength, like a wavelength of sound. And when you're thrown into a particular suffering like that, it's this terrible symphony of sound, of just anguish. And so it's overwhelming and all encompassing. But there is a whole range of human beings that are also in that wavelength at exactly the same time. So, at least we can expand our heart out and think, I'm with you and they're with me.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Anyway, that's as far as I've got with how do you help people that have nothing, which is probably our close relatives, right?
Yeah, I can definitely see some of that. And I think, that's really, even just as you're talking through that and imagining that, there is a sense of, it's the when you really kind of basically say, it seems like the emotional component is not as strong as maybe the logical, rational approach to how you might be able to do something. That stands out more in my mind as you're describing that.
Yeah.
Viewing suffering
because
for many people rather than just focused on internal suffering for myself.
Because the internal suffering, like, it's just never going to go away, and not wanting it actually makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then we because fighting against anything, the more you fight, the harder it feels. So actually we have to relax our mind into the anguish. And the only way we can really do that is to open it up and become aware that there are others. And so then, just like we feel the anguish, then we know what they're going through. So now a shared suffering is much easier. But also the others, like, it's not just now at this moment, but it's all the way back through time. People have had anguish and suffering, and they've lived through it and survived and brought meaning to it, made this terrible situation useful, made inventions from it, helped others, all of this stuff. So there's actually a world of support there in that sharing that we can tap into. And you could almost feel it like, there's the symphonic sound of anguish. And then there's also the light within there we can draw on as support. And so whether it's like all the women, all the mothers with breast cancer and unable to share with their daughters, or all the people with whatever form of abuse and unable to let anybody else know, we have our people. They're there, not just in suffering, but in the support. So there's that, just dealing with the basic emotions that people have, but those emotions go much deeper. That's actually what brings meaning to our life. So but ordinarily we have no way of connecting that. So we miss out on the actual profound meaning of our life because we just don't want the emotion. We don't want the suffering. And so all of us here, it's up to us to be the brave ones and just step in. While everybody else says, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss and how terrible and how awful and la, la, la. So that's great. They can all do that. Then they say, keep it, chin up. Don't worry. It'll be fine. That's the ordinary world. Leave that to the ordinary world. But for you, you've got to be the brave one that strides on in and helps open this situation up to make it really meaningful. Whether we feel quite ready or not. Yeah, I mean, and we've also got the Four Noble Truths to draw on too, because there's the understanding suffering part, which takes courage to just acknowledge problems. Like, because mostly when people come across problems, we find it, we recoil. We don't want to know. It's ugly and embarrassing. So even just to be the witness of suffering is a big deal. So with your close relatives, to just be a witness and not freak out so that they don't have to present a face to you or they don't have to protect you. That in itself is just enormous, an incredible offering to make, to be the one that won't freak out. Whether you've got any answers doesn't matter. The fact that you're not going to recoil from the messiness of life and the pain of life, that is a big deal, because honestly, everybody recoils from pain. So that's a big one. And then if you can bring the next, of the bring in the rest of the Four Noble Truths of actually finding the wisdom in the suffering. Where does it actually come from? How can we use it? What can we do with it?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just to really, that example in my own life just recently with what the familial support there. I mean, I feel like I'm more able to maintain a sense of composure, and I do think historically I may have been quite almost reflect the emotion that to some degree that I was seeing in someone else. Whereas now I think there's a lot more composure, I think is what
Yeah.
And that seems to be a much more, it seems to help resolve the emotional state of the other person at that point, more so than, because it was like, oh, there's almost two people that are kind of in a similar emotional state and they can kind of continue on. Whereas, just to see that in action was, so thanks for putting into words there too.
I mean, that's great. That's excellent, Tom, because of course the first thing that happens when is we mirror the suffering. Like, that's empathy kicking in, and I don't know, they talk about mirror neurons that don't actually exist, but it's a very nice metaphor. And so that is, if we recognize suffering, in a way we also experience it, and that is that's an empathy reaction, and it's the basis that we can build compassion and wisdom upon. But if we just leave it at just sharing or mirroring, like you said, it can actually make things worse, because now you have two upset people, and at least you're upset together, but it you can dive into that hole and it never ends. So the being able to really acknowledge the emotions and the problems, and that they don't make sense, and that you might be ashamed of them, and all of those things, just being able to acknowledge that without freaking out. That's a big deal. But Tom, you've also got to give yourself a bit of a break too. So you do all of that for your close relatives, and then when you go home, then it's your turn to be messy. Okay. So it's the context, and you've got to make sure that you have your own space where you can be messy and you can freak out and you can be overwhelmed and not have to put on a good face and everything, just to become aware of the lay of the land within your own mind and heart. And you can go, oh, so this happened to me just the other day too. I had a meeting so there was 4 of us. 3 of them really touchy-feely people, and me very kind of methodical and operations focused. And we just like talked at cross purposes the whole time. And all the way through, I was beginning to feel really upset. And I'm thinking, this is really weird. I feel like I'm going to burst into tears just talking about how to organize something, an event. Like, what's going on? And I could feel this feeling coming up. Anyway, so it's an okay meeting and whatever. And then I was just like, afterwards, completely triggered, completely collapsed. Messy, what happened? What the heck? All at sea. So what I do is I just write everything down as a way of trying to, there's this overwhelming feeling, and I try and capture it in words. And it takes ages. Usually what I start off doing is I start writing a letter to the person, and I've learned to never ever put their address in it and never ever send that letter, because what it is just me trying to sort out what the heck happened. And no one can read an email that long anyway. So in the writing of it, then I kind of figure out what happened, and I figure out my inability to do things, or my total lack of resources or skills in that area, and I get the lay of the land. And then you'd be your own therapist, and you go, well, this is where you're up to today. I forgot that I'm much better one-on-one, or I'm much better leading a class because I get to dominate and be correct. But if I'm being peer, like, equal with everybody there, and they're speaking a different language from me, I start feeling left out, and I start feeling unsupported and misunderstood, and the whole thing starts collapsing in, and then you're way back when you're a kiddie and the same thing happened. So you got to give yourself a break and go, oh yeah, that's what happened. For yourself too, you've got to be your own witness, so you don't buy into it, but you have to witness it and go, yeah, that's what happened. Go through all the work, and then you're ready for the next meeting. So you too, Tom, you do all of the interaction with the family, and then you go home and you just let it all collapse and get the lay of the land. Be your own witness. Be kind. Have all those words of Lama Yeshe percolate up from that little booklet. They'll come up. He'll come into your ear and say, hey, Tom.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the idea of putting it into text as well, as in writing or typing or something. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, which is deceptively difficult to do, because actually trying to capture these huge amorphous feelings and pin them down with just a few words, it's really hard. It takes enormous energy. But I think that's a real investment in your discriminating wisdom. It really pays off being able to do that. And so some people find the speed of typing really helpful because you get it all out. Other people find actually physically writing it, because it engages more of your brain, and you get into a flow state, and the actual physical feeling, repetitive movement sets off endorphins in your brain. So actually physically writing can also be a whole lot more than it appears. The other thing that you could do is just, what also I do is sit and crochet, because that's also a flow state. It's a physiological hack. So by repetitive movements with your hands in particular, it sets off again the endorphins in your brain, and you get into a flow state so that you think differently. So it means that new thoughts and ideas or insights have a chance to arise. So they even had an article about this on the news. One of the Olympians, I don't remember which one, but he's been sitting knitting. You saw that, Shayla? Yeah. And so now it's got to be legit because a male Olympian has been knitting. It must be good. So he's been knitting all sorts of great sayings and things. But it was really interesting how his coach also understands this is part of decompressing. And if we want to develop in anything, we've got to go, and then we have to stop and decompress. So it's called interrupted learning or intermittent learning. You can't just go. You actually have to stop and get into a state where you're not directly involved in the thing. You're doing a sideways thing. So usually that's the hobbies: crochet, cooking, whittling, gardening, jogging, swimming, kneading bread. So maybe the generation of our mothers, they're the ones that when they were stressed, they get up in the middle of the night and make cookies. I mean, that's the folk wisdom. It's repetitive movements with your hands, kneading the dough. It's actually works on a neurological and physiological level. So that's probably another way to help our close relatives is to do things like that with them whilst we're talking. Because then if you've got actual wisdom to share, it'll go in a bit deeper. It's not just going in intellectually. So often when you go for a walk with someone and talk, it's quite different from, say, sitting in the lounge having coffee or tea or something like that. Or if you're washing up, sometimes the most important conversations happen over the washing up at night. So you can preempt that and have a few things up your sleeve so that the intensity, that can sometimes be quite confronting, it takes the edge off. And possibly even really fun things. So washing up's a bit boring, but you might have other both things that you both really enjoy doing. Do those together, and then when you're in that flow state, talk about hard stuff. Are there any things that I missed out on the things that we can do, those flow state things?
I just wanted to say that I think that ties in with what we discussed last week about, instead of letting our mouth run or say the things that we don't want to say or we shouldn't say, taking that step back, thinking things over, writing things down. And maybe tomorrow I can help, or maybe tomorrow I can say the things that I shouldn't say. But I really like this, taking a step back and not acting in the moment and, jumping, jumping to conclusions and thinking I've got to fix this and I've got to solve this, but just coming back and bringing things back, thinking things over, doing something like write it down or crocheting or my little, whatever I've got going on. I think
it creates
that's going to slow
space.
things. Yeah, I agree. I really, really like that. So I think last week and this week really tie together beautifully.
Because I also remember Venerable Robina often talking about how we panic. So something happens and we panic, so that we absolutely have to do something. We jump in. So in there, we've often made heaps of assumptions. We have this urge to fix and an inability to just sit with it. And that actually just makes it worse for the other person who's also panicked already. who also just wants it fixed and gone. And so then we, in effect, compound the situation. So all of these ways, it's a way of making space. I mean, traditionally, of course, the way we make space is we sit and meditate. Well, I've got to tell you, I don't like doing that. That never worked for me. The way I make space, it's got to be quite engaged. So the writing it down, it creates, it's like it really creates some space to work with a situation. And like you said, it slows it down. And and when we're panicking, that's the exact thing we have to do is slow it down. And it's really hard to do because we're mirroring. Someone gets upset, we get upset back. And already there's no space there. So having these things pre-planned up your sleeve so that as you feel that urgency arise, the panic, got to do something, got to fix, or we start feeling ourselves getting impatient, that's when we've got to have everything pre-prepared. Hey, let's do this, or I've got this crochet problem, or let's take the dog for a walk, and have it ready, planned, up your sleeve, ready to go. Yes. So if I ever go out, I have a whole lot of things up my sleeve for this of what to do because I'm pretty socially inept. So I have to pre-plan these things.
You know, maybe the British actually have it down. A cup of tea can solve everything because they're stopping exactly what they're doing. They're leaving the room, they're fixing a cup of coffee and bringing it back. I don't know, maybe
That's right. So you're there, then you're not there. You give everyone a chance to compose themselves, come back. I mean, and then you've got the Japanese tea ceremony that's done exactly the same thing, but brought in the shared experience again of ritual, same kind of in a whole very tidy way, British in a very polite way. Australians also have a cup of tea, but usually it's with a whole lot of ironic humor. So, but yeah, a cup of tea. And actually, I remember when I first came to Langri Tangpa Centre, when my mother Inta was dying of cancer, and I had to kind of, even though I wasn't ready, try and step into her shoes and keep the centre going. And so I was asking people, so what was it about Inta that they that made Langri Tangpa Centre, that was so good about it, that because she was the heart and soul of the centre. And everybody said they just came to this centre and there was this sweet old lady that invited them in for a cup of tea and a biscuit. And that was it. Just the friendliness of come and have a cup of tea. And I thought, okay, so that I can do. And that is like the sole entry point, to the entire Buddha Dharma is a cup of tea. So yeah, perfect, Shayla. Absolutely perfect. So it's right on the hour now. We can dedicate, and so thank you, Tom, for your really considered sharing. I've found it really, really helpful and very nice. And thank you, Esther and Shah and Kichan and Deb, for being there. I know you're there, and I know you've been taking it all in. So that's great. We're all there in the interwebs as a shared community. And Shayla, excellent host as usual. Next week will be your own therapist, but I don't know who it is who's coming along. It's always a mystery, and I'll probably see you later on down the track. But let's dedicate all of this energy and all of our questions and our thinking along the track, in particular, that we can develop this internal Dharma journey for ourselves, really strong and sure, and that we can have that courage and presence of mind and big-heartedness for our close relatives, and that we can really when we have this altruistic attitude, may I be able to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, starting with the ones right in front of me, which are my close relatives. So by really making that relationship deeply worthwhile, then we can work on our relationship. Automatically, it's with all sentient beings. So keep that big picture and let's dedicate it for that, for enlightenment for all. Thank you so much, everybody. It's just been wonderful, and I hope to see you again.